Hey, what's up guys, and welcome to another Arca Garage video. Today I'm gonna go over my ownership of Alfa Romeo Giulietta over the last 2 years, in which I put 40,000 kilometers on the odometer. I'm gonna go over the comfort, practicality, reliability, maintenance, and lastly we're gonna go over the cost. Alright, let's start with the comfort. Now, as you probably already know, this car is riding on the 19-inch wheels. It still has the factory suspension, and I gotta admit that this car is still fairly comfortable. Now, in the past, every time I installed 18 or 19-inch rims on any of my cars, it made the ride significantly harsher. However, that is not the case on this car. Now, the driving position is not ideal, but it's still pretty good. I got all the room I need up here at the front. However, when I'm sitting in the back, you can see that my knees are hitting the front seat, so seating the 4 adults in this car is not gonna be very comfortable. That doesn't really mean much to me, since I drive my kids in the back pretty much most of the time. Now, when it comes to boot size, it is fairly big, but it is somewhat smaller compared to, let's say, Golf Mark 6. Now, when it comes to practicality, Giulietta is fairly practical car. Even though I just said that the boot is not very big, you can still fold these seats. Besides that, it is still a 4-door hatch, so if you got kids like I do, it is going to be pretty much perfect. Now, there are a few other things which I did to make the car a bit more practical. I installed this 2-DIN Android multimedia, which is pretty much like having a tablet. You can do anything on it, install applications, access internet, and even diagnose the car. Another thing that I installed, which was really necessary in this car, is this little phone tray. I also made it so you can wirelessly charge your phone. Moving to a bit more serious subject, and that is gonna be reliability. Giulietta, in my experience, has been a car to wish for. I really didn't have any issues whatsoever with this car. The only thing that I did, I basically just maintained it. I didn't follow the factory's 30,000 kilometer oil changes. I do my oil changes every 7,000 to 8,000 kilometers, and the car has been serving me perfectly. Now, keep in mind that simplicity is always gonna equal to reliability, and this 1.4 turbo engine is basically the simplest engine you can buy in this particular Alfa Romeo model. Now, if you ask me which engine I would recommend, if you are simply looking for something reliable, I would definitely recommend this engine. Now, besides the engine, I also got to talk about the suspension. The suspension on Alfa Romeo 156, 147 and GT was quite sensitive to bad roads. This one is quite opposite. It took quite the beating over the last 2 years in Croatia and Bosnia, and I didn't have to replace any of the components whatsoever. Again, I gotta mention that this car is riding on the 19-inch wheels. Now, while I said that this car really was reliable, there were still a few things which came broken when I bought this car. One of them was this fuel flap. Now, the little pin which holds this fuel door was broken, and I've basically fixed it for free. If you want to see how to do that, I'll put the link in the description below. Another thing which required fixing was the recirculation motor. It's all the way under the dash, and it is kind of pain to fix. If you want to see how to do that, I'll put the link in the description as well. And lastly, I also had to fix this storage compartment. It was all broken up. Now, the new one cost around 100 euros. I didn't really want to pay that much for the new one, so I decided to fix this one. And if you want to also see how to do that, I'll put a link for that as well. Now, besides the mentioned things, I also replaced the gear knob cover and the interior door handle. Now, to conclude the reliability portion of this video, I gotta say that the car has been absolutely great. The only bad thing about it is that they used some very cheap plastics, and the best examples for that are the things that I mentioned before, the fuel flap, the recirculation motor, and the storage above. Moving on to maintenance. As I said in the beginning of the video, I've done 40,000 kilometers with this car. I replace my oil every 7,000 to 8,000 kilometers. Now, every oil change for this car costs only 30 euros, including the filter. This engine takes about 3 liters of oil. Now, full small service costs around 70 euros. So I basically done 4 oil changes and only 1 full small service. Now it's due for a small service in a couple hundred kilometers as well. Besides that, I also replaced the rear discs and pads, and that came up to 130 euros. I've also refilled the AC. That came up to 25-30 euros, and I replaced the oil in the gearbox, and that was the same around 25-30 euros. And finally, let's go over the overall cost of running this car. And here's my total cost that I spent on maintenance. Now you just seen how much money I spent on the maintenance, and that is really not much considering that I've done 40,000 kilometers with this car. I'm gonna consider all of that cost necessary because I had to do that to keep the car running smooth. The other good thing about this car is that I've equipped it with LPG system, so even day-to-day costs of filling up this car is very cheap. The LPG in my country is less than half the price of gasoline. Now, besides all of the mentioned costs, I've done a lot of modification on this car, and all of that costs money. Now I'm gonna go over that, and you're gonna see that I basically spent much more money on modifying this car than I've spent on maintenance. I'm gonna start with these 19-inch BBS wheels. I'll put new tires on them, and that whole package cost me around 1,000 euros. Besides that, we got this front lip. Now the front lip is fairly cheap. It only came up to maybe like 15-20 euros. Next, we got this grill, which is the one from the facelift model. Now it's not the genuine grill, but it still costs around 100 euros. Next, I got a couple of things as gifts as well, and that goes for the upgraded speaker system. Now I got this head unit from a Toto for free, but this head unit costs around 400 euros. As I said before, I've done this phone tray, and I've made it so you can charge your phone wirelessly. That came up to maybe like 40-50 euros. I've converted the interior lighting to LEDs. I've converted the lighter to USB charging port, the DIY eyebrows, and so on. I've also installed the LPG system. Now, whether that was necessary or unnecessary, you be the judge. The whole system cost me around 500 euros, but it actually saved me much more money than that. And here is the amount I've spent on things you could consider unnecessary. Now, to conclude this video, I gotta say that I'm more than happy with my Alfa Romeo Giulietta. It has been a car to wish for. It doesn't really cost a lot to maintain. It doesn't really cost a lot to run it day to day. It has LPG, so it's very cheap to fill up. It looks amazing, it's practical, and it's basically everything you would want in a car. Anyway, that would be all for this video. I hope you find it useful. If you did, hit that like button and support our channel by subscribing and by sharing our content with the rest of Alfisti.